Hi there, the name's Rory Townsend, and I'd just like to share some info that I've sort of gained by working with this movement of models from Sketchup through to Unreal Engine 4. Um, what I've My philosophy is that I'm trying to avoid other programs, like even moving it into Blender or to 3D Max Cinema 4D, or even I have Unfold 3D, 3D Coat, which is for painting onto models and so forth. But Unfold 3D and UV Layout are specialist programs used for UV mapping and that sort of thing. What what I'm trying to do is to find a streamlined process that just works between SketchUp and all the extensions that you can get from the warehouses, extension warehouse, and from Sketchification. Um, Use them and be able to work between SketchUp and Unreal Engine with all the modeling that I require. Now my work requires basically a concept design, so I don't do necessarily, human beings or animals or big meshes with millions of polygons in that. Mine is mainly concept work, so it's visual in architectural kind of work, uh, sort of design work along the way. So I pretty much can do all of that inside SketchUp. So hence the reason why I'm wanting to keep my workflow strictly SketchUp and Unreal Engine. The one challenge that I have is that sometimes I get models from the 3D warehouse and I take it to Unreal, and then when I render, it becomes a bit of a mess because the light maps that get generated, there's not a second UV, and then all blotches come on when I run it. So when I take it into Unreal, it looks nice, and when I run the first sort of build, then it all goes haywire. I thought that was a problem of SketchUp from the word get go, but it's actually not. SketchUp creates a UV map for all its models, and when you import it into Unreal, there's a box that you check there that says create a second light map UV. So Unreal creates a second UV map, and it basically lays out the UVs very neatly. Um, the person who can be responsible for messing up the UVs that get into Unreal is the actual person designing the model in SketchUp. So if we follow a few, good guidelines, and which I'm not going to discuss here, but if you follow good guidelines and create your models well, you're probably not going to have that problem happening. However, there's still one issue that I find translates from SketchUp into Unreal, and it goes for any other program. Um, the last session that I spoke about, the tutorial that I did, I said we move all the models without textures over to Unreal. But often you want to actually do the textures in SketchUp because you're in a kind of creative phase, and often you could actually take those textures along with you out to Unreal. So I'm going to show you a way to make sure that your textures are going to always look good in Unreal Engine when you move them out. Um, and I'm going to just do it with a little sample, do a little box. Now, to put textures onto a box is pretty simple. When you if you put a color on it, or color material, it will fit anywhere and you won't see any sort of issues with it because it's just a color. As soon as you put a texture onto that material and place it on the object, you can then see a bit of defects, because you might find, if this was, for example, bricks, as the bricks go from one side to the other, there's not a flow of those bricks, etc. And even worse when there's a curved surface. But let me just show you what problems do exist. So I'm going to just artificially create a problem here for us. What am I doing? Yep. And maybe do another little one there and go straight. So basically this is going to be covering um, tools that I use to texture um, the objects in Unreal. I mean, in SketchUp, I've it's basically a paint bucket tool on steroids, and it's created by a developer that develops a whole suite of different extensions. The one I'm using is called ThroughPaint. It's literally a substitute for the paint bucket in SketchUp. And as it is with this tool here that I'm hovering over now, joint push pull tool, it's also a Fredo tool, which basically does what the push pull does, but so much more. And I'll just give you a little sample of it. And I recommend you get to use these tools because they're going to make your modeling so much more clean and so much more streamlined and so much more quick. SketchUp is very fast, but this will actually get you to work faster. So maybe I'll just show you where the power is to get you excited about it if you haven't seen it. This one here is Fredo Scale tool, which I'm not going to deal with now, but it's got some brilliant features. If you had to have a push-pull tool like here, now you click and you want to pull on this surface, pull here, pull here, pull here, pull here, nothing happens. It says it cannot push-pull. When you hover over a flat surface, yes, by all means you can do that. So you're pretty much stuck when you're busy modeling and you could get frustrated with it. However, in here, enter joint push-pull tool, and they've got different variations. I'm going to just randomly choose this first one. And the reason I'm saying this is first is because if you click the first one, it pops out a dialog of all the others there. So this one with the J, joint push-pull. Can you see when I hover over this surface, it selects the surface. Now, if you look up here, you'll see there's a whole lot of other features, and all of the Fredo tools that I'm going to show you have a similar interface. But here, for example, it's giving me indication that you can select entire surface, a single face, all connected faces, and pretty much these selection features appear across some of the other tools also. So once you're familiar with one of them, you'll kind of work with the rest. So I've clicked that tool, I hover over here, left mouse click, and I pull. And can you see how easy that is? Control Z, pull here. Okay. And you notice it's doing both because I've got both selected. But if I just select this one, select the two, and then we'll just do the pull up there. And you can select individual sections and do all of this stuff. Okay. Oops. So basically what I'm saying is if you want to create good models and have flexibility in editing, create your push-pull tool. But now the focus is on the Fredo ThrouPaint. Okay, and it's basically under Fredo Tools. You can go get it in the extension warehouse or under Sketchification. You can sign up there and you can get these tools are all free. This, the scale tool, the push-pull, all of them are free. So if you click this ThrouPaint tool, that's the one we are going to be focusing on. Now, just to show you here, there's this little A that's red here. I've enabled it, which means that if I click on this bucket, it will open this by default. So I've actually replaced my normal bucket tool with this ThrouPaint tool. Okay, so it's a paint bucket on steroids. Okay, I'm going to first disable this and show you what problems we could sit with if we have to use the normal painting tool. I'm going to use the checkerboard just to show you so you can actually see where distortions happen. I'll select it and I'll paint it. If you look on the sides, they look pretty nice. Not a problem with the sides. However, when you go to the top, then you see there's some pretty nasty things happening. And what do I mean by that? If you look at the standard blocks that are here, when they start to get to certain areas, you see there's ones that are squished, ones that are stretched, ones that are squished. These are stretched along. So that means that if I put a texture on here, and maybe I should just do that. I'm going to take this brick texture, put it on here. If you look closely, you're going to see these things are, this is stretched here, these ones are squeezed. So it's not a good method of applying. And if you want to edit any of these textures, you can do so, but you've got to, have to isolate them. If I want to click on here now, I don't have the ability to edit texture. I'm going to have to click on the side and right click, and because I put the texture on as a group, I have to now create and make this a unique section, And once it's unique, then I can only start editing with a few limited features. The other way to project on the top here would be to draw a surface, place the texture on, use your eyedropper tool, or before you use your eyedropper tool, on the texture you right click and say project onto that flat texture. You take your eyedropper tool, you make a sample, and then you paint on the surface and it will come out a bit better. However, it still won't come out as expected. There still will be distortions. Trust me on that. I've done it, and I don't want to repeat it in this exercise now. But how do you overcome this? Let's simply buy into the concept of ThroughPaint, and I'm going to enable it there. And let me show you how simple this is. ThroughPaint works on the basis, look, I'm in the group. I haven't even, selected, deselected or moved out of the group or that sort of thing. While you're in the group, it has the ability to edit even. So I'm going to use the same checkerboard, and here it's got 3 different UV painting methods. So I'm going to choose the first one here. If I hover over here and click, there you can see it goes. Pretty nice, but there's still deformations over here. There's still areas here. Okay, what I've done is when I've clicked here, my selection has been for the entire object. What I will do now is make the selection for an individual surface and then use different setups. So I could use the quad mesh for the top and the natural projection for the sides, etc. So let me do this projected one and see what's going to happen. Now I can click on here, it's going to click on the surface, but I'll click and drag across it so that it maintains the proportionality. So I'm going to go, actually I'm going to go on the mesh there, let's see. Okay, did you just see what happened there? It still goes nicely, but it still has its deformation, so that's not going to be the one we choose. We're going to go there, and there I'm going to go. So I've used the quad mesh one, and if we look, doesn't that look beautiful? Everything looks proportionate. We've moved the quad mesh thing around, and interesting thing is when you see it goes over the surface here now, there's still now, this is not aligning correctly. So this is still from the previous setup. So I'll go and click, and from this I'm going to click and I'll just move it while mouse clicking, left mouse clicking onto the new surface. And you see there what happens? It adjusts onto the surface. It adjusts. So I'm just keeping the left mouse button, use middle mouse to rotate around. So I'm just swiping over the surfaces and it readjusts itself. Okay, and I'll let go. Pretty much here we have a bit of a thing. Let's just see if we can sort that out. Oh, no, it's my mistake. It's actually folding around. Okay, if I want this not to go around the corner with this segment here, I can just double click. Oh, I've got to select this one, double click here, and move this a little bit closer. So that's great. Okay, so that's now created a beautiful mesh that fits proportionately onto this entire model. And this is what we're looking at. Now the big question is, once we've done this, we know the mesh is going to come out nicely and translate nicely to Unreal. But how do we now put a particular mesh on? Because this checker box was just to let us ensure that the shapes and the proportions are all right. So how do we replace it? It's a simple tool again in the same UV painting. You'll see this little tool here. It's to transfer the UV, which means that whatever the UV map is that we've used to lay this out now, it will stay there and it will just apply the new material over that UV mesh. So if this thing has been proportioned, we won't need to guess which one it was. We just take it there. We'll choose a material, and here the selection I'll make is select all connecting faces. So we can click once and it's basically using the mesh that's been laid out already, that's proportionate now, and just throwing the new texture on. So we're going to click once. Actually, I should have clicked there. There we go. Can you see that? If I'm not too happy with how it's laying out there, I could still go in and then we move it all around. See, we can go from there. Those are balanced there. If I want to adjust it, I can move it. You'll see it will move around the corner. There we go. Okay, here we're seeing something strange happening on top here. I think I did that because of my selection there, which was the entire thing. So when I applied a change here, it affected the whole thing. So I'll come back here and just move on to that texture and just roll it around there. That should sort it out. Okay. So that's how we get our mesh nice and our textures nicely lining up. Again, we could decide that we want to move this one onto the side to make it align, but it's pretty much aligned there. Remember, this is moving over a curve and this is going straight, so you're never going to have the distance from there to the next one being the same as how it's straight. It's just mathematics there. Okay, but that's pretty much how we get to do it, and from there we basically take it out to Unreal. But the one thing I want to highlight is that if I am in doubt as to whether this UV mesh and everything is working correctly, I can take this and export it as a OBJ, and I'm going to just select that as the only selection, and I'm going to say shape. Let's call it a shape. And the only purpose of moving it to Unreal Engine now is to see whether the UVs are lying okay. If they're pretty much okay, then I know this model is fine and I can keep it, I can keep modeling further with other structures. So I export that, and into Unreal I'm going to just import that shape. And like I said, the only purpose of this now at this point in time is to check if the UV map is fine, because it's no use building the entire model in SketchUp and building all the components and then finding out that there's issues with some of the components. So it's good practice to kind of keep Unreal open when you finish building the specific model or mesh that you're working with. You can save it as a group and bring it into Unreal and check it out, everything fine, and you know you are away. If I click the stop button here, it's going to show me generate a UV map. So this will create the second UV map when I import. Make sure that combined meshes are not on. And then I'll see import materials, import textures, import all. Okay, it will tell me that it needs smoothing, but that's not a problem. So here it comes in. So say I'm building this particular unit, and this is the first part, and then I'm going to be building something else. So that's worked out already. To test that, like I said, I could take this out into other programs and check the UV meshes and all that, but I want to use Unreal as our tool because this is where it's going to land up eventually. So bringing it in here looks fine. What I do here is right click and edit shape. Okay, so I have the shape there. First thing to look at is on the left. It says UV channels 2, and then I go to the top. It says UV channel 0, UV channel 1. That's the first channel and the second. I go to the second one, which is the one that Unreal created on import, and I click UV. And there you see a very beautiful layout. There's a layout of all the different UVs, the sides and tops of. There's nothing that seems to be overlapping where you have a box like this that's overlapping the other one. So pretty much it's got enough spaces amongst it. It's not going to create problems when you build it. So if we go to do a build, let's just do a build. We're going to see now that it will come up and it'll say it needs to generate a map or something, and then let's see, yes, map needs lighting rebuild. It rebuilds it and it comes map check complete, no errors. And there it's busy now generating. It says compiling the shaders. So there are no overlaps and your model is particularly clean. Now you can say, okay, I'm happy that this model is fine. And you can technically save this now. If this was a key model that you're doing, you can save it, and then always can open it later and use it. So you can build up your library of assets in this way. Okay, so there's your texture nicely mapped out on your model. Okay, so that's how you get a nice texture mapped out well that comes into Unreal from SketchUp. And if you had to make a change to this model now, let's go and just see. If I had to come and make a change here, let's say for example I use the push-pull tool, and okay, that's not the one I want to use. I'm going to just, it's got everything selected, that's why. Just hover over there. So I'm going to do that. If the thing is mapped out correctly for me and I don't have a problem with it, oops. Okay, I'm just erasing that. So technically, if I had to make that adjustment on the object, and I'm not sure if I've messed up any of the UVs or anything, all I'll do is take it, export it again, and save it over the existing one. Okay, just make sure when you select that you've got export current selection. We export it, and then in Unreal you can come on the model, right click, and you can say re-import, and you'll see there it will re-import itself and come in. And then you can right click and check again if the UVs are all still in order, and that pretty much looks nice. There's nothing that's crossing over each other. Okay, so if we run a new build, there shouldn't be any dark spots or anything along the way. So that's the way in which we can ensure that we creating models in SketchUp and texturing them well and bringing them into Unreal and ensuring that there's no UV overlaps. If there happens to be overlaps and we can't clean it up nicely in SketchUp, yes, then we probably might have to go to the blenders and the other stuff. But I have found already that with most, if not all, of my models that I build, I'm able to build relatively clean models, because as I build, if I'm going to do adjustments to the final component, like say this is one component, if I was going to now build things that add on to this, say this was a wall and I had to build cupboards, I'll build the first cupboard, take it out, see if it looks fine, check it out and everything. Because remember, you're busy building assets for your actual environment. So it's not like you are building something and then you're rendering and it's giving a problem in the same program. The focus of working in SketchUp is to build the asset and to make sure that the UVs aren't overlapping and the textures are right. Should be done all over there. Once you've got all of this sorted out here and the textures sorted here, then you can come in and do all the materials, start editing the materials. You can even replace materials and so forth. Okay, so hope that's been of help to be able to sort out textures in SketchUp, making sure that you model well, taking it out using the Paint Through tool. Is it called Paint Through? I keep forgetting. It is, let's see. Okay, come on, give me some names here. It's called ThroughPaint. Yeah, I think it's ThroughPaint. It's called ThroughPaint. So once you get with your ThroughPaint texturing properly, as we've shown in the session, exporting it as an OBJ, and then pretty much doing the right click, edit shape, check the second UV, and remember the second UV is there because when you imported it you selected that, or it would by default be selected. Make sure that the UVs are fine, and then pretty much that would give you a happy model. Okay, so thanks, and I'll load up something more in the future as we go along, maybe on creating instance materials inside Unreal. Okay, have a fantastic day. God bless.